First of all, we have Sarah Wainio. She's a producer and a creative force with work across MTV, Netflix, TLC, and Max, with credits including Teen Mom, Young and Pregnant, The Lost Kitchen, and 90 Day Diaries, Ukraine. She is a New York City documentary new leader, honoree, and ethics advocate, and has a focus on impactful storytelling with strong social lens. We also have Gretchen McGowan, producer and head of production at Goldcrest Films, award-winning producer with almost 60 films worldwide, with credits including Carol, Restrepo, Cat Person, Jim Jarmusch, Coffee and Cigarettes, and Emmy-winning The Fire That Took Her, with a focus in shaping stories from script to screen with creative and operational excellence. We're so happy to have you guys here today. Well, let's get started. My first question for you both is, what inspired you to pursue producing, and how did you find your path into this role? I know you both studied theater, so how did you get from there to producing?
Hello. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here, and I hope you're enjoying these very comfy seats. Thank you for joining us on this 80-degree Saturday in September. It's nice to be here, and then let's all go frolic afterward. Gretchen and I were talking earlier about, how does anyone find their way to documentary? And for me, I think there's every path is a direct path, because I think most of us are just humans curious about other humans. But for me in particular, producing, it was just my skill set. I'm very type A, and I like things to be efficient and organized and timely. And so just taking the things I was already doing had a natural place within our industry, and I was great, love that. Yeah, I know it's not super exciting, but it was just the natural progression for me and my skills. And you always want to make things better. You want to show up on set and solve problems, and that was for sure a way that I can solve problems.
Hi everybody. Thanks for having me. I found my way. I think I'm still finding my way, quite honestly, in producing, because it is a shape-shifty world, and it's always changing. But as Julia said, we're both theater majors, not together, separate years. But I did come to New York thinking, I'm going to be a theater producer, and I'll just pass my resume around, and eventually I'll be on Broadway. And that didn't work out, but I didn't really try it all that long, because I could see that everything was an unpaid internship. And I was able to get a paid job eventually with a company that was a real estate company. They supported its film habit with real estate. So they made a lot of award-winning documentary and feature films. And it was a great way to kind of get my foot in the door. I was the office manager. I did everything. I called the plumber. And I, would make sure the boiler was running. All these things that are kind of like producing at the end of the day. It's just you were producing a building instead of building a home, and there were people in that building. So I did, one of the things I always say to students and people looking to kind of get that foot in the door is to try everything, to not be afraid to try accounting, which is something I did to make some money at a certain point. That there might be avenues into the business, all of which I was willing to take, or most of them, that might be unconventional. The less sexy side of making films might be location scouting for a little while. But saying yes to that usually leads to something else, and usually, can lead to film producing.
And I'll just add one quick thing, which is definitely try everything. And also, I think we're all creative folks, so it might be easy to say location scouting isn't as sexy, but I think bring your creativity to that. Take the best scout photo and create a beautiful portfolio. I think I am a very creative person, so my budgets are very colorful, and some people hate that, and that's okay too. But bring the creativity and bring what fuels you, I think, into whatever role you're doing, because people notice that, like your personality shines through, your, what makes you you shines through, and I think that it's easy to stuff that down sometimes. So maybe just as it is appropriate, find the ways to bring creativity into everything.
Oh my God. Okay. So Sarah, I'm a little sick. So Sarah, you've produced across different formats, both film and TV. How do you adapt your approach to different formats?
Oh, this is a good question, but I think really ultimately, beyond format, each project is really its own animal, beast, machine, and I think that's part of what's really also great about our work. It also for me really is so reminiscent of theater and like creating my own family with that crew and that, group of actors or actresses. And I think sort of each film project or TV project, I'm sort of using film as the generic term, you got to know the people you're working with. You have to know their preferences. There's a steep learning curve, I think, till you figure everyone out. Sometimes that's like pretty much when the project is done. But I think it's really like the flexibility, so much more beyond format. It's just like understanding your team and sort of how that team is going to get to the finish line. Each project I work on, really even like within TV shows, so wildly different. So I think it's just sort of thinking of each team as its own entity, and it lives and breathes too. So like the way that team works well in December might not be the way that team works well in March. And yeah, just being as flexible as you can will always like serve you. I'm not saying it's easy, the flexibility is easy, but the more flexible you are, the more successful I think you'll be.
I can answer that kind of in a different way, in that my flexibility has been back and forth between feature documentaries and narrative features. And I love being able to go back and forth because I feel like I'm one of those people who knows how to get a narrative feature done on a smaller budget with a smaller footprint, to move quickly, to have an answer to say, ooh, let's break off the crew and get that thing. We're on the grid, let's get that at the restaurant around the corner with this tiny little crew and save half a page of a big company move. And sometimes, just thinking light on your feet the way you must in the documentary is something you can take with you into the narrative world. And I also just love, on the whole, having a smaller footprint. I think that's why my experience in studio films has really only been in accounting, to have learned the trade and to understand how that works. And I'm only working with a studio generally if I'm delivering to them. So we're working independently entirely.
Oh my God. Yeah, thank you. So this question was for Gretchen, but it goes for both of you as well. Looking back on all of your projects, you've spoken about how you've both done documentary features and how that's where both of you overlap. Can you think of a project that particularly shaped your approach or your perspective as a producer? And like, anything that was very formative to you?
Trying to think, there's that sort of holistic answer that I've given about my approach that I take with me from one project to the next. I think for every film, there's a story of something that went wrong, right? And then you can think, okay, what was that movie and what was the thing that went wrong? And what was the thing, and you don't really think what went right. Well, hopefully you're sitting in the movie theater and you're enjoying the movie and it's added up to something that actually did go right and that you got the right crew together. So I think it's good to sort of take an inventory in a way after the movie is complete of all the things that did work for you. But that, if I'm answering the question, which I'm probably not really, is just that ability to learn from what went wrong, to say, or again, like to think quickly on your feet and solve it. I think about Coffee and Cigarettes, a movie where we lost our main location right before shooting. We had this fantastic armory location up on the way up Upper East Side. And then the Iraq War was declared. sort of, and we were going to war, and the reserves were being called up. That location was being used for a much more important purpose than making a tiny little independent film for Jim Jarmusch. So we had to think quickly, and we found our locations on a grid on the Lower East Side. They were better. They were better locations. Of course, we had to move around a little bit more. It wasn't ideal. You can just roll the truck back up to a loading dock and get it done. But we could, we found these beautiful locations at the school on the Lower East Side, and we were all just much more happy for it. So sometimes that thing that you think is the worst thing, losing your DP, I can tell tons of stories about it, ends up being a really great thing, and you have to kind of embrace it. It's very hard to see that in the heat of the moment.
Okay, things that I'm just going to build on what Gretchen said because I think it's very brilliant, and I am sort of implementing this new practice into my practice, which is reflection, and I'm pulling that sounds like duh, but I mean, even to me, I'm like, okay, Sarah, genius. But reflection, I'm borrowing from an organization I'll probably end up talking about later, but I want to give them a shout out because if you don't know about them, you should. Their acronym, although I adore them, could be improved, but their acronym is DOG, which is Documentary Accountability Working Group. Like I said, the acronym is like, but they are incredible. The work they do is incredible. They offer a lot of resources for ethical filmmaking, really in particular for doc, but I think it's relevant for all filmmakers that are conscientious. DOG, as a part of their framework, talks about reflection, that you should be having reflection at all points of your doc practice. And again, as duh as that sounds for like a social justice-y gal like me, I wasn't doing it. And so I now, like really very, almost corporate-y, to me, these are my words, but corporate-y, will like sit down once I wrap a job and sort of do a little chart for myself of like what went well, what did not go well, what I want to do to make it better in the future. And that is like really for me so that I am making sure that I'm bringing with me what I learned on that project, because also sometimes the lessons that I learn are painful and like are things that I perhaps did not do as well as I wish I had, but like I think it's extremely important for yourself, like not necessarily for people you're reporting to, I mean those are great too, and you can say, hey, look at all of these wins, but it's also good for you to look at the embarrassing things and then the wins, so that like sort of, because also our work is tough and we need to sustain ourselves in between jobs, and we have to like emotionally sustain ourselves in between jobs, and I think having this really intentional reflection, which is new in my practice, is really going, I hope, will really serve me and make me a better filmmaker.
Breakdown of the script, and it's like looking at zeros and ones for him. He doesn't want to look at the breakdown, the script breakdown, which is ultimately going to be how you break off strips and shoot your shooting schedule, I should say. So you have to be sensitive to how he likes to work. He wants to be told a story. He'd probably rather that I sit down and say, on day one, we will begin in Seville, and then we will move to, and it will be a lovely day. But it can't always be like that. But I do like to first take the script, early days, right? Take the first iteration of the script that we've got anyway, and break that down in scene order. And go through that with them, 20 scenes at a time or something, and be able to say, do we have redundancies here? Does that start to feel like, a repetitive scene? Just as, in writing a book, you start to see what really doesn't belong and what's extraneous. So it's a helpful exercise that not every director is open to doing it. But if you have them early enough, there's a good reason to maybe sometimes even volunteer yourself a little bit earlier to get in on that ground floor. Until you do that, you can't do a real budget, right? Until you do that, and then you take those existing strips and you turn them into your sort of, what I call a schedule in a vacuum, because it doesn't take into account what locations are available and what actors are available when, but you've got at least a starting point to get your budget together. But it's really just a dream budget until you're able to create that schedule. So there's sensitivities with certain directors. on those kind of nuts and bolts points, right? And the other thing I would say about, since we were talking locations a little bit, you will lose a location once in a while, and you have to have some really good backup plans in place. You'll have the one that everybody dreamed about that is a great load-in that's close to the production office, and you can do all this and you can save a bunch of money, and then you'll lose it. And so always having like 3 locations in your back pocket that are clear, that are close to being clear, that you've shot in before maybe, that are going to make your director very happy. Because on the one hand, and this isn't just for locations, this is for anything, with a costume designer, on the one hand, she took the other job. On the other, oh my gosh, look at these 2 amazing costume designers we've got.
Yeah, so it's like, use your creativity in absolutely every way possible to like, shift your pitch. I think for me, oh man, it's so difficult. I was talking recently to a friend who's a hairdresser, and she was like, my job is constantly to help people figure out like not what they think they want, but what they really want. And I was like, damn, you're right. That's also my job. So I think like it's really a journey, and it helps, of course, if you've worked with a director before, because you've laid that groundwork of understanding when they say like, oh, I don't love it, whatever that actually means for that person. But I think a huge part of producing is really like helping you're a translator in some way. So you're translating between, that 500K gets you this film, and what your director's seen and how to. It's just a lot of translating. I'm often translating between directors and editors and set designers and directors. And I think it's also our job to just, as often as possible, which is always, have that like 360 or whatever degree view, because I think we're also all excited creatives, and so it's really easy. We see it so clearly, and it's like very important that we're all actually having the same conversation, because I'm seeing this team in particular of mine that I can just see like my DP's so excited, and he knows exactly what he sees, and it's nothing like what my director is talking about. But they're both so excited, and like it's gonna be great, and it is. Well, it isn't always, but hopefully it will be great because I will help them translate. But I think often it's really like this again is like not revolutionary, but like taking a beat, taking a breath, stepping outside of the room, and then like, because also all of these incredibly challenging things that we are expected to do, and we do as producers, they're still hard, and we still need a moment to adapt and like to allow our creativity to pitch our our missed chance at a set designer. Still like takes a beat for you to figure all that out. So like finding your moment to be calm or cry in the corner, like that's okay too. I think just having your moment, caring for yourself, and then we were talking about pivoting earlier, which also makes me think of Friends in that episode with the couch. We're like, pivot, but like just pivoting, flexibility.
I was just thinking a little bit of a tangent here, but about directors and DPs in particular, but also I would say any head of department. That pre-production time is just so essential, and to me, the most important, besides editorial, of course, which I'll always love, but the most important time for what the movie is going to become. And with that, I've been crammed into, you're gonna have to make this happen in 4 weeks, which I've done, but it isn't great because you lose the time, those sort of incidental relationships start to form between the director and the DP. Get a chance to go get some sushi together, and they figure out how to consolidate 2 scenes, and they come back and they're really excited. You're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. You should get sushi more often. But it's just these kind of happy accidents of being and especially when we're on location, right? Because then they kind of must be getting meals together, and it's fun to sit back and watch those relationships form. And sometimes it's like, it makes me a little sad because I've been the one who's been the go-to person, the problem solver for the director for so long, and suddenly there's somebody taking all that away from me. I don't care, it's fine. Take the glory and run with it.
I love that. Speaking of relationships, what would you both say is the most important, like what makes a strong producer-director relationship?
Yeah, I would say also, I'm going to go back to the early stages of that, because often it is just the two of you, solving those problems together until everyone else comes along. And at that point, you can dream big, right? Because there's nobody to step on it. You're saying, this is what I think we can do. I think we can go to Sevilla, we can go to Madrid, we can go to Almeria, and then we can fly here and back again, and boom, Bob's your uncle, you have a movie, and you get the whole thing in shooting scene order. You get that time to really build the dream of what the movie is. You're the first person, probably, to take the script and turn it into zeros and ones. And that's, for some people it's terrifying, like I said, but for others it's the most exciting thing, because that means this is happening. You made a shooting schedule? Whoa! I had a script yesterday and there's a shooting schedule and a budget. Like, yeah, we do this every time. Don't get too excited. But it is fun, and then you start to really to interpret and get to know them, have the meals with them, and everything they're saying, every conversation you're having gets transposed onto that schedule, that budget, that list of crew, heads of department that you're going to be hiring, because you're getting a sense of who they really need to work with. You're watching movies together, you're creating watch lists together. You must see this, you must see that.
I think on sort of another end of a director-producer experience, something that I've learned is that me, I am not always the right producer for that project. And I think it's a hard lesson, and I still fight it. Like, I'll still meet folks and I'm like, oh, I love this movie, I want to produce it. That doesn't mean that I'm the right producer. So I think as you're building this early relationship wherever you are in development, or you might already be in production, but I think being able to recognize that is like actually means you're a great producer, and being able to navigate like disentangling oneself from a film, you're maybe an even better producer because it's difficult. But I think that really, like, of course it serves the film, but it will also serve you and that director in your lives and careers, because I think these are just like long-term relationships that we have, and you want them to go well. Like, I don't know, I don't want to say I buried myself. I have gotten myself stuck in what felt like a director-producer relationship that like really wasn't serving either one of us. And I guess it's like humility, but allowing yourself to step away, which is really hard to do. But I think that is something that like we probably will all face in our career at some point. So having a healthy relationship with like what that is for you. Like, I was about to use the word failure, but it really isn't a failure. So like whatever you want to call that, but just relationships that aren't meant to be, creative relationships that aren't meant to be. But I think that allowing ourselves space for that too, which is really hard in this world where we are hustling and just trying to make a paycheck. As producers, it's really tough, and sometimes that again is humility, and you might not be the best person to produce the film because of personal reasons, and you might have to put your personal reasons aside. So that's like not as much of the fun part of our work, but I think it's very real, especially now when work it's a really challenging time to be in the business. So yeah, just I think having like a honest relationship with yourself, and like, am I actually the right person for this, for me, for them, for the film? And it also might be 3 different answers, so it's just sort of, sorting through that.
So you both touched a bit on this, but if you want to speak a bit more to how you build trust and maintain like clear communication with the crews, different creative teams, besides the director as well.
Because I've been talking a lot about narrative, and how many people here are documentary filmmakers or working on docs? And how many of you are, maybe you do both, but how many of you are doing narrative features or in the narrative world? Okay, so it's good to have kind of a good sense of that. I think this is a little bit, the relationship with heads of department with a producer, so often, the research that you do is by speaking with other producers in the field, other line producers, saying, who would you recommend for this type of project? And as soon as you give them the director of the synopsis where it's filming, they'll probably have 3 ideas for you. And some of them are just because they're friends, so you have to kind of put the friend filter on that often and have an understanding of why that person might be a good match. Then you go and you look at that person's CV, and you dig a little deeper, and hopefully they get the script, they like it, and they come in for a meeting if everybody thinks it's a match. But the relationship is, one of the first discussions you're going to have after you look at swatches and all the fun stuff is to look at a budget and say, look, this is what we've got, and I imagine that this is the labor portion of it, and this is the materials portion of it. And can you, probably not what you're used to, or maybe it's more than what you're used to, but can you envision doing this? Because it's like a two-hander on a stage. Like, can you imagine doing this? And is this the world in which you can work with, and can you work with this size crew? So you want to, and you don't always get a chance to do this or properly because you're so rushed. But you want to make sure you're making the same movie. To your point earlier, it's just so often you'll get halfway through the production and realize the director and the DP are making a different movie. And another really important relationship is the first assistant director to me. Once we get to set, because I don't want to be on set all the time, I want to be able to leave set. And I need to know the director and the DP and the first AD are this perfect triangle making the perfect movie together. Because so often an inexperienced DP or director will box out a first assistant director, and then they won't be in control of the set anymore. And everybody starts to feel it. Like it just starts to trickle down very, very quickly, and then the day can get out of control. So I want to make sure in pre-production that they've got a shot list, that they're working together, if they have an unconventional shot list and it's a 30,000-foot view of a stage, that's fine, whatever it is, that you have to be telling the same story and you have to have the same plan.
I'm trying to think of like a fun or different trust-building example, but I think for me, again, it really, like, each team is so unique. So one example that I'm thinking of, what we call because I direct reality TV also, we call it sort of embedding. So when you go out and stay for 2 or 3 months and then come back for like a week and then go out for a couple months. So I had been embedded, which actually sounds like a war term or something to me. It sounds a little weird, but we had been embedded in Norfolk, Virginia, Norfolk Beach, and we're filming with someone we were on labor watch, so we were waiting for her to have a baby. And the team, like, as small teams do, had gotten a little annoyed with each other after week 2, and like tensions were high, and I needed everyone to it was the rule of the set, like in the lobby for 2 hours these days, just so we would be ready. And like they were just so over it, and my DP wasn't showing up anymore on time, which was creating a really bad trickle effect for me, for all of us, but for me in particular. And so my trust building choice, and this was after calling my mom and crying and being like, I don't know he doesn't respect me. She was like, why, what do you share? What can you align on? And it turns out it was Game of Thrones, which actually I don't watch, but it was the finale, and it was really important to him that we watch the finale. And so I set something up with the hotel that we were at, and we got their rec room, and we got to watch Game of Thrones together. And it really, like sushi, much like sushi, Game of Thrones is a rallying cry. And I think sometimes just this is not profound, but just remembering that we're all humans. I was so frustrated with this person. It was really I'm making light of it, but it was pretty tense, and I just didn't feel like I knew what to do. And thanks Mom. Just remembering that we're all just people, and we are just making a TV show about pregnant people in this situation. has been really helpful for trust building. And it's also how I want to be approached, you know, when my EP knows that I've had like a really challenging week, or, you know, we're just all people at the end of the day. And I think to build trust can be like what actually might seem like really not that big of a deal. I didn't get him like a 200, you know, a week bump on his paycheck or anything, but we all sat down and watched 60 minutes or an hour and a half of Prime TV, and you know, it worked. Our relationship we have a great relationship, but it is much better, I think, because of Game of Thrones. So, thank you.
Yeah.
So you've spoken about filming a TV show about pregnant people, Teen Mom. Both of you have told stories about real people and sensitive subjects. So when you are approaching those stories, how do you navigate ethical considerations?
I think you should say that. Especially, this is a good time to bring it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely have a very personal and unique answer, I think, here. But it's what, actually, I could have started this panel talking about this. It's what really got me into the industry beyond being good at budgets, is that on September 11th, 2001, my sister was killed on September 11th, and after that, I participated in a couple of documentaries as in front of the camera, and it was really tough. Like, I mean, it was really, really hard. I think I know those folks were doing the best they could, and truly, like, I mean, this is history. My life is history. I wish it weren't, but it is. I see the relevance, but it was really hard, and so, like, really every decision I've made has been through the lens of first being a participant and knowing the care that I would want, which definitely translates, I think, to how much care and time I put into my team, Game of Thrones. Yeah, but I mean, I think ethics are like critically important, especially right now. And I don't want folks to be because it's also, as I've said many times, because I'm a realist, it's super complicated, and I think the fallacy that I had was like, it's going to be clear what the right thing to do is. And turns out it's not. So I volunteer with a nonprofit called the Documentary Producers Alliance, and we just released an ethics resource library for filmmakers. It's like a library, so everything's free. You don't need a library card. It's online right now. I'll say the URL, and then I can give it to you later. Also, it's www.docproducers.org/ERL, like Ethics Resource Library. Tons of great work from DOG, this organization I was talking about, but there's like incredible writing out there about ethics and how to care for not just participants and actors, but crew. And I don't think folks really know where it is. And so the point of this library was to not, to take away excuses for folks. So that's there for you, all of you, which will also serve you in caring for yourself, but that is there for you, and I strongly recommend you check it out. It's free, and ethics can be sexy. And I can't really tell you why, but just go and check it out.
Yeah, and specifically, you know, working with an individual on a release, you know, making sure that they're feeling safe when you let them know about the project first. I just start with an email evolving to hopefully a phone call, maybe a Zoom, depending on your distance, but when possible, it's in person. And then there's, you know, this piece of paper, right, that they're going to need to sign this release, and you'll at some point say, right, we have everybody sign this, but of course we want you to have a chance to look at it thoroughly before you do sign it. I'll sign it too. But before we would have any cameras come out, you would sign this and return it to production. But if you'd like to share it with your lawyer, we can look at any clauses that concern them. But you know, some of those releases are quite aggressive. Some of them ask for life rights, and they ask for all sorts of things to be let go of, and you don't need to be that aggressive. Depending on what story you're telling, you know, I recommend the least that you need to do, and to walk them through it too, if it's not something they're used to doing.
I'll just add one other thing, which is that I've really seen like a huge shift in thought about a lot of things, I think, in the last 10 years in the doc world. So I think philosophy is changing about paying participants. I think it's happening far more often now. I just think if this is an area of interest to you, and I hope that it's an area of interest to you, pay attention, because I think things are shifting, and I think that's okay that things are shifting.
I mean, this is a different kind of shift that I'm about to ask you about, but how has the rise of streaming platforms affected your role as a producer? That's a very topical thing right now, for sure.
Well, it's been a tough last few years for us at Goldcrest. You know, Goldcrest Post, which is also in our building, we're located down in the West Village, and they own the building, fortunately. It's 7 floors of making films, and we're film production on the top floor, and then everything else is post-production. So I get to post all my movies there, which is nice, not leave the building. But we have been doing very well in post. They do projects like Severance and Godfather of Harlem, and keeps very, very busy. Last year there was a bit of a lull, though, even in post-production. But that business of creating and delivering episodic features or narrative projects has been pretty great since the pandemic, and now, of course, we're not doing as well. And there are fewer and fewer to deliver to. So I think probably you all know. Fewer to pitch to, fewer to make films for, fewer to work for, fewer to deliver to. In the narrative world, sorry, I should say I'll say documentary, I don't want to even go into narrative features, but you know, there are just so few buyers right now. It used to be, in any given year, we'd be doing a doc feature for HBO, Nat Geo, Peacock, and like 3 others, and simultaneously. And I was so busy, you know, because I would be producing very hands-on, very minutia, big picture, small picture, each of those projects. It's very slow right now. I'm delivering something to WNET, you know, which is the easiest delivery ever. And then we're finishing another project right now that doesn't have distribution. That's been having a lot of acknowledgement. It's a political film, and we made several different versions of it. It's called 64 Days. And it is, we've been unable to get a distributor for it. We've also been unable to get E&O for it. That's another panel. But it's a challenging time to make a political documentary. The streamers, if they are interested in your project, it's because they don't have anything else like it. We have another Ukraine film, and they say, we've ticked that box. We have our Ukraine documentary. We don't need another one. So it's a really rough climate. I feel like 5 years ago, we would have been able to sell absolutely every one of these projects.
Surprise, yeah, it is a tough time right now, and I wish, I'm a realist, you know, like I want to be an optimist. I like want us all, please God, keep making films, but like also the realness is that it's hard right now. And again, I'm saying films, but films is TV, films is everything for me. You know, I think we just have to be creatives, and I think we have to really adapt and like create uncharted. You know, the formula might not be there of like, this is, we're gonna develop, pitch, get money, make, you know, it might look different than it has in the past. I think YouTube, I'm not like an expert here. I can only tell us all the research, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there for direct to consumer for all of us, both, you know, YouTube, Vimeo, anywhere where you can do video on demand. So I think it's just like a time for all of us to be creative and not get insular, like not go into our own, says the woman who volunteers for like a producer-only organization, but it's a problem for all of us. And so the cinematographers and the producers and the editors, like and the actor, everyone really, like, we're all being affected by it. And so I think it's just, we're gonna go to our places where we go, and I'm gonna talk to my fellow producers, and then we all need to, like, I don't know if it's a forum, but we all have to get together, because I don't see it changing anytime soon. And I still want great stories, and I still want us to all work. So I think that it's gonna take, I don't think we should be the ones solving it. I think it is a much higher issue, but it's becoming our issue. And so here we are left to face it, and I just don't want to sit around and wait. Really, that's my energy. But I think it's going to take a lot of artists, as it always does, sort of, in my opinion, like collective action and working together and understanding that we actually are far more powerful than we think, but all together. And it is hard to work, as we know, as our whole job is, it is hard to work together. But I think it's possible if we all continue to come to festivals, continue to make these great relationships and work together.
Yeah, and there are some exciting models too, like Kinema has got a model whereupon you garner enough interest and you do a lot of work. Yet more is in your court. It's like publishing, I would say, very much. It's following that same course, that so much more is in the filmmaker's hands as far as getting the word out there. Fortunately, you're able to do a lot more with social media now anyway. It's in your court. You're expected to do so much more. And if you can get that community together, if you've got a political film and you can galvanize that community, you can take that to Kinema and you can get it in theaters and you can feed that machine in a really different way, but it's getting the filmmaker very actively involved in their own distribution.
So what advice would you give to aspiring women producers?
Just don't stop. Don't stop. I don't know. I that's not advice. Maybe it is, because it is hard right now. But I can't be more emphatic. I will get up so high on my soapbox and say I just really believe. I'm not omniscient, but to my core, I really think now is the time that we need our stories. We can't self-edit. We can't self-censor. I mean, we can and we will, but we should really think about it, and we need to be making our stories, getting our stories out there. I do think it's harder than ever, and I really think we need our stories more than ever. So I just whatever you're making, I'm psyched to be in this room with creatives. Keep making it, be scrappy, take breaks, take care of yourself, and then keep doing it. Because I'm like a rabid artist woman right now, but we just it's a scary time, and I think we need creativity. We need to give people a place to escape. We need to let people see themselves on screen. So I'm so psyched to be in a room with this many creatives. So just don't stop. We need you.
Yeah, and I think that ability to shift gears, to shift in and out of different departments, just look for the opening of what might be like I said before, the unconventional opening of where it might be. You'll be surprised what you can learn by being in the accounting department, by what goes into an actual movie. So I think that there is a lot of hope. I just feel like it's tough for filmmakers coming out of school who think the only thing they can do is direct or write right away. The great thing that happened is that 10, 15 years ago, well, more like 20 years ago, it was the introduction of digital, the democratization of making films by putting cameras in just everybody's hands. And that's evolved even further, of course, since that time. But everybody in New York kind of got together. I was working for Mark Cuban's company at the time, and we got all the filmmakers behind cameras, and we ran these tests together and said, okay, what cameras are the best, and let's put our heads together. Companies like Killer Films and Good Machine, who had been our competitors before, were saying, oh, that's what that looks like when you shoot it with a red, and that's what's different when you shoot it with an HD camera. I get it now. We're starting to keep that language going. Well, that's being part of the film community, being a good member of the film community, is sharing your resources and thinking about what your strengths are. Maybe it is that you are a good location scout. Maybe it is, that you're good with numbers. But it can't just be directing all the time, but it might be eventually.
We are almost at the end. So one final question that I have for both of you is, what is one thing you wish audiences understood better about a producer's work? What is one thing you wish audiences understood better about your work as a producer?
I think I've given up on audiences knowing what I do, but great question. It's a great question. Yeah, I've definitely given up on my parents. Gretchen and I were talking about this before. I've definitely given up on my parents knowing what I do. I don't know. I hate to shoot this down. I'm just like, I'm not sure what they need to know because I don't know. We're unsung here. Sometimes we're sung. The org that I volunteer with is Craft Producers Alliance. We're always trying to get producers to be more sung, but bigger fish to fry, I guess, than the audience caring about me.
Yeah, if other filmmakers can understand what we do, and then there's at least some empathy along the way, that's great. I did write a book, however, about my kind of the 90s and the aughts of making films. It's called Flying In. It is going to be available afterwards if you like. And it was fun to write it because it was fun to go back in my head in that time and think about how those struggles were different, right? And how my day-to-day was different. And yes, my sister is never going to understand what it is I do when I show up to work every day, but it's never the to-do list that I set out to do, I'll tell you that.
So we're just gonna have, Sarah's gonna take a selfie with you guys.
But yay consent, if you don't want to be in the picture, just dunk down. Because I want you to be in the picture.
Oh, yeah. Oh, can you get in it? Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3.
Cheese.
Good work.